long cliffs looked. Stephanie possessed a fluid elegance. I need to find where I belong. Beneath, his spirit experienced a quiet friction.
The gift of stillness. Stop living across the sea. Let your heart rest in one harbor.
Okay, Mom. The rhythms of a restless soul. The limestone cliffs of the Carso Plateau looked particularly stark under the blinding white light of a Mediterranean July. At 20 years old, Stephen Kent had grown into the full physical promise of his lineage. He possessed the towering, broad-shouldered frame of his American father, the deep, luminous umber skin of his Nigerian mother, and an unmistakable fluid elegance in his movements that belonged entirely to the grand, wind-swept avenues of Trieste. Yet, beneath his calm exterior, Stephanie's spirit was experiencing a quiet, turbulent friction. The university semesters at the Università degli Studi di Trieste were no longer enough to anchor his attention. His mind had become a map of overlapping coordinates.
To find the missing pieces.
Ever since he had crossed the threshold of adulthood, the yearly family pilgrimages felt less like structured vacations and more like fragments of a puzzle he was desperately trying to piece together. This particular summer, a profound restlessness had taken hold of him, and he had approached his parents in the high-ceilinged dining room of their Costiera mansion with a radical new proposition.
Places at once.
I want to split the holidays evenly from now on, Stephanie had announced, adjusting his glasses as he looked across the mahogany table at his parents. 1 month in Enugu, 1 month in Baltimore, and the final month here in Trieste. No more traveling as a single block. I need my own itinerary. Nelson Kent had exchanged a long, measured look with his wife, Rose. Nelson, whose hair was now entirely silver, leaned back in his chair, his hands clasped over his chest with the quiet gravity of an old sea captain assessing an erratic current. Rose, elegant.
Beneath his calm exterior, Stephanie felt a turbulent friction. I want to split the holidays evenly from now on. 1 month in Enugu, 1 month in Baltimore, and the final month here.
The gift of stillness. Let your heart rest in one harbor.
Okay, Mom. Arena, let's spend the day together. Baby, please, you have to understand. I can't come.
You have to bear with me. That is not an answer.
You will remain here in Trieste. Baby, please, you have to understand. Please don't cry. Amaka, please.
Rose, elegant as always in a simple linen dress, set down her teacup with a slow, deliberate click. An even split, Steph? Nelson asked, his deep voice resonant. That's 3 major flights in less than 90 days. It's a massive logistical strain, not to mention the expense. You're asking us to finance an international shuttle service. I can manage the jet lag, Dad, Stephanie insisted, his voice tinged with an urgency he couldn't entirely hide. It's important to me. I feel like if I'm not there, in each place, things change. Life moves on without me, and I lose my grip on it. Rose leaned forward, her sharp, intuitive eyes scanning her son's face. As an African mother, she possessed an internal radar that could detect the unspoken motives behind any request. Stephanie, look at me. You are 20 next month. You are a man. But as long as your father and I are paying your university tuition, your rent, and your lifestyle, your decisions must make sense to this household. Why this sudden rush? Why must you fly across the Atlantic and back to West Africa in the span of a few weeks? Stephanie hesitated. His tongue, usually so fluent in 3 languages, suddenly felt heavy. How could he explain the true nature of his dilemma? How could he tell them that in Enugu, Amaka was waiting for him, her letters growing more desperate, her voice on the phone, a beautiful, haunting reminder of a love that the time to breathe. How could he explain that in Baltimore, the vibrant, effortless attention of girls like Chloe and Tasha made him feel a thrilling American sense of freedom that he craved the moment the European winter became too cold? And how could he balance all of this with Irina, his steady, beautiful Triestina?
The gift of stillness. Stop living. Let your heart rest in one harbor.
Okay, Mom. Baby, please, you have to understand. I can't come.
You have to bear with me.
Sit down, Stephanie.
Of girls like Chloe and Tasha made him feel a thrilling American sense of freedom that he craved the moment the European winter became too cold. And how could he balance all of this with Irina, his steady, beautiful Triestina, who held his daily life in her hands, but whose world felt small compared to the vast global canvas he inhabited? It's just about my identity, Stephanie stammered, his explanation ringing hollow even to his own ears. I need to maintain my connections. If I stay away too long, the bonds weaken. Rose sighed, shaking her head. That is not an answer, Stephanie. That is a speech from a textbook. Your reasons are cloudy. There is something you are not telling us. Nelson stood up, pacing to the large window that looked out over the Gulf of Trieste. Son, a captain doesn't steer his ship into a storm without a clear destination. If your reasons aren't transparent, I can't justify the resource. For this summer, the summer of your 20th birthday, you're staying put. No Nigeria, no America. You will remain here in Trieste. The words felt like a heavy iron gate slamming shut. For the first time in his life, Stephanie was grounded. The midnight echo. The house on the Costiera was profoundly silent at midnight. The Bora wind was dead, leaving the Adriatic completely still, a dark sheet of glass reflecting the distant lights of the Icentina coast.
I can't
Rose Mads
I know it
Kent
hurts.
could
Please
not
don't
sleep.
cry. Amaka,
A mother's
please.
intuition is a restless thing, particularly when her only son is harboring secrets. Shuffling quietly down the marble hallway in her slippers, intending to fetch a glass of water from the kitchen, she noticed a thin sliver of light
Please, you have
cutting
to
across the
understand.
dark
I can't
floor
come.
from
You have
beneath
to bear with
Stephanie's
me.
bedroom door. She stopped. From inside, she heard the low, muffled cadence of Stephanie's voice. He was speaking English, but
I need to find the missing pieces. I need to split the holidays. That's a massive logistical strain. I need to maintain my connections.
You cannot occupy 3 places at once. Stephanie was grounded.
Baby, please, you have to understand. I can't come.
I can't come.
I know it hurts. Please don't cry. Amaka, please.
harboring secrets. Shuffling quietly down the marble hallway in her slippers, intending to fetch a glass of water from the kitchen, she noticed a thin sliver of
Baby,
light
please, you have to
cutting across the dark
understand. I can't
floor from
You have
beneath
to bear with
Stephanie's
me.
bedroom door. She stopped. From inside, she heard the low, muffled cadence of Stephanie's voice. He was speaking English, but his tone lacked its usual confidence. It was thick with a heavy, pleading sorrow. "Baby, please, you have to understand," Stephanie was saying, his voice cracked with emotion. "My parents refused me. They won't fund the travel this summer. I can't come. You have to bear with me." Rose froze, her heart catching in her throat. She pressed closer to the door, her breath held. From the speaker of the phone, despite the volume being low,
Please, you have
the
to
distinct,
understand, I can't
frantic
come.
sound of a girl's voice
I
filtered
know
through
it
the
hurts.
wood.
Please don't cry. Amaka,
The girl
please.
was crying, a deep, agonizing sound of heartbreak. Through the static of the international connection, Her words tumbled out in a distorted, inaudible rush, choked by heavy sobs. It was a torrent of raw emotion, a desperate protest against distance and time that the phone lines could barely carry. I know it hurts, Stephanie whispered into the receiver, his own voice trembling as he ran a hand through his hair, his silhouette shifting against the light. I wanted to be there. I tried. Please don't cry. Amaka, please. Rose stepped back into the shadows, her hand covering her mouth. The pieces of her puzzle instantly fell into place. Her son was not suffering from an identity crisis. He was suffering from the heavy, fractured weight of a global heart. He had left pieces of himself across the seas, and the strings were pulling him apart.
You have to bear
She
with me.
quietly returned to her bedroom, her mind racing with a mixture of sympathy and maternal concern. She realized that by grounding him, they hadn't just restricted his movement. They had forced him to confront the reality of the boundaries he had spent his life trying to.
I still can't believe how beautiful it is here. Trieste always surprises me.
I know, Barcola is just magical.
It really is. Don't worry, they're gonna love you.
Hi, it is so nice to meet you. Welcome! We have been waiting for this. I'm so glad we're finally here. Me too, it's perfect.
Council at dawn. The next morning, the kitchen was flooded with the golden, practical light of the Italian sun. The scent of freshly brewed espresso filled the air, mingling with the sweet aroma of local pastries. Stephanie walked into the kitchen, his eyes ringed with exhaustion, his shoulders slightly slumped. He expected the usual morning routine, his mother bustling around, his father reviewing shipping news. Instead, he found Rose sitting alone at the small glass table on the terrace, 2 cups of coffee waiting. Sit down, Stephanie, Rose said softly, gesturing to the chair opposite her. Stephanie sat, bracing himself for another lecture about responsibility. But when he looked at his mother, he saw no anger in her eyes. There was only a profound, grounded empathy. I heard you last night, Steph, Rose said directly, her voice gentle but firm. I heard the phone call. I heard her crying. Stephanie froze, his skin turning cold. He looked down at his hands, his knuckles whitening. Mom, Listen to me, Rose interrupted softly, reaching across the table to place her warm, maternal hand over his. You don't need to explain. I know who Amaka is. I know the families in Enugu. And I know the girls who look at you when we visit Baltimore. You are 20 now, Stephanie. You are handsome, you are brilliant, and you carry the wealth of 3 worlds.
Sit down, Stephanie.
But you must
cannot
learn
occupy
a very
3
hard
places at
truth.
once.
You
Let your
cannot
heart rest in one
occupy
harbor.
3 places at once. She squeezed his hand, her voice carrying the ancient wisdom of a woman who had crossed oceans herself. You have spent your whole life running from one country to another, thinking that if you keep moving, you don't have to choose. But by trying to hold on to everything, you are giving nothing your full heart. This summer, your father and I gave you a gift, even if it feels like a punishment. Stephanie looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears.
I want to split the holidays evenly from now on. 1 month in Enugu, 1 month in Baltimore, and the final month here.
I still can't believe how beautiful Barcola is today. Trieste always has a way of surprising us. You are absolutely right about that.
It feels like a punishment. Stephanie looked up, his eyes shining with unshed tears. A gift? Yes. Rose smiled gently. The gift stillness. Stop looking at the airport schedule, Stephanie. Stop trying to live in the future or across the sea. Explore this city. Look at Trieste not just as a place where your father bought a house, but as the soil under your feet right now. Calm down. Let your heart rest in one harbor for a change. Stephanie sat in silence for a long time, the weight in his chest slowly shifting from a sharp ache to a dull, manageable peace. His mother's words were a lifeline. She wasn't judging him. She was freeing him from the impossible task of being everything to everyone, everywhere. Okay, he whispered, a small, genuine smile finally breaking through his fatigue. Okay, Mom. The reawakening of Barcola. 2 days later, the oppressive weight of the midnight phone call had fully lifted, replaced by a conscious decision to choose the present. Stephanie stood in the shade of the pine trees along the Barcola promenade, his phone held to his ear. "Irina," he said, his voice carrying a lightness it hadn't possessed in months. "Are you free? Let's spend the day together. No university talk, no future talk, just the city." Within an hour, Irina arrived on her vintage scooter, her hair windswept, her bright blue eyes sparkling behind her sunglasses. When she saw Stephanie standing by the water, wearing simple linen shorts and a t-shirt, she didn't hesitate. She threw her arms around him, her laughter blending with the sound of the crickets in the pine trees. "You're finally fully here," she whispered against his neck. "No distant look in your eyes today." "I'm entirely here," Stephanie promised, kissing her cheek. They spent the afternoon doing what true Triestini do when the summer heat reaches its...
Irina, I have never felt this way about anyone before. I love you so much, and I cannot imagine my life without you.
I still can't believe how beautiful Barcola is today. Trieste always has a way of surprising us. You are absolutely right about that.
Sit down, Stephanie. You cannot occupy 3 places at once. Let your heart rest in one harbor.
Okay, Mom.
They walked along the concrete rivas of Barcola, watching old men play cards under the shade and teenagers diving into the deep, clear water. For hours, Stephanie and Irina swam, the cool, salty water of the Adriatic washing away the lingering dust of his anxieties. They laid their towels on the white stone, letting the sun dry their skin, talking about everything and nothing, without the ticking clock of an impending international flight hanging over his head. Stephanie found himself truly seeing Irina for the first time in months, not just as his local girlfriend, but as a brilliant, fiercely independent young woman whose roots were deeply embedded in the very beauty of the landscape around them. Echoes of stone and soul. As the sun began to lose its midday ferocity, turning the sky into a soft, pale amber, they took the scooter up the hill toward the historic heart of the city, the San Giusto district. They walked through the cool, majestic interior of the Duomo di San Giusto. The ancient cathedral, with its magnificent Byzantine mosaics glowing in the dim, candlelight atmosphere, demanded silence. Stephanie held Irina's hand, their fingers intertwining naturally. They stood before the massive mosaic of the Madonna, the gold leaf reflecting the flickering votive candles. For Stephanie, who was used to the vibrant, thunderous church services of Enugu and the sprawling, modern megachurches of suburban Maryland, the deep, historical quiet of the Duomo felt like an anchor. It was a space where centuries of different cultures, Roman, Byzantine, Venetian, had settled into the stone, creating something entirely cohesive. "My father always said this city is a mosaic," Stephanie whispered to Irina as they stepped back out into the warm evening air of the castle courtyard. Individual pieces of different colors, but when you look back, they form a single picture. Irina stopped.
I'm entirely here. Sit down, Stephanie.
That is not an answer.
You will remain here in Trieste. Baby, please, you have to understand. Please don't cry. Amaka, please.
Sit down, Stephanie. You cannot occupy 3 places at once. Let your heart rest in one harbor.
Okay, Mom.
Antine, Venetian, had settled into the stone, creating something entirely cohesive. My father always said this city is a mosaic. Stephanie whispered to Irina as they stepped back out into the warm evening air of the castle courtyard. Individual pieces of different colors, but when you look back, they form a single picture. Irina stopped, turning to face him, her hand still resting in his. The evening light caught the contours of her face, making her look like a part of the historic scenery. And what color are you in the mosaic, Stephanie? Stephanie looked out over the red-tiled roofs of Trieste, down to the vast blue expanse of the port, where his father's ships used to dock. I used to think I had to be a different color depending on where I was standing, he said openly, his voice steady and mature. But being forced to stay here this summer, listening to my mother, I realize I'm just the cement that holds my own pieces together. I don't need to fly away to be whole. Irina smiled, her eyes reflecting a profound, growing respect. She stepped closer, her arms wrapping around his waist. I'm glad you stayed, Steph. I'm glad you're learning to love the stone under your feet. As the sun dipped completely below the horizon, painting the Gulf of Trieste in shades of deep indigo and gold, Stephanie leaned down and kissed her. It was not the hurried, anxious kiss of a boy caught between time zones. It was the deep, deliberate kiss of a man who had finally found his footing. From that summer holiday onward, amidst the ancient stones and the timeless sea, Stephanie and Irina began to build an intimate, unshakable relationship. One that was no longer threatened by the horizons of the world, because they had chosen to build their world right where they were.
Stephanie has told us so much about you.
Thank you. It's all so delicious.
Distance only frightens people who don't know where they belong. You know where you belong now. We are building something that doesn't break just because someone boards a train.
Mom, Dad, I really want to thank you. I'm so glad you grounded me from traveling. I love Trieste so much more now. And things are serious with Irina. Thank you for everything.
The architecture of the present. The transition from a restless, divided soul to a man firmly rooted in his immediate reality did not happen overnight for Stephanie Kent. It began in the subtle, daily shifting of his gaze. For years, his eyes had instinctively sought the horizon, watching the cargo ships clear the breakwater of the Porto Vecchio, dreaming of the red dust roads of Enugu or the sprawling highways of Maryland. But the summer of his 20th birthday, under the gentle guidance of his mother and the firm grounding of his father, Stephanie learned the art of looking downward at the solid limestone beneath his feet. Irina was the catalyst for this new vision. At 17, turning 18 as the autumn leaves began to dust the Carso Plateau, she possessed a grounded grace that was uniquely Triestina. She did not seek to change Stephanie's vast, multi-continental identity. Instead, she provided a sanctuary where all those disparate pieces could rest without friction. Their dates that summer became a master class in slow discovery. no longer rushing against the ticking clock of an impending transatlantic flight.
always surprises me.
Stephanie found
I know,
himself
Barcola is
experiencing
just
Trieste
magical.
not as a
Really
temporary
is.
transit station, but as a living canvas. On a crisp Tuesday afternoon in September, they took Irina's vintage Vespa up the winding, steep roads towards the village of Prosecco. The air was changing, carrying the sharp, sweet scent of the grape harvest. They parked near a cliffside trail that overlooked the entire Gulf, a view that stretched from the colored sails in the bay all the way to the hazy coastline of Slovenia. My grandfather used to tell me that the Bora wind is the city's architect.
I'm so glad my parents grounded me. I love Trieste more now, and I'm serious with you. Staying here with you was the best thing for us.
In those quiet hours, Stephanie's love for Irina deepened. It became something structural, founded on her resilience. At 8, they walked through chilly streets to the Canal Grande.
Like, comment, and subscribe to
Total Entertainment Channel. We love you.
We love you!
Father used to tell me that the Bora wind is the city's architect, Irina said, leaning against a low stone wall, her blonde hair caught in a gentle breeze. It blows away everything that is loose or superficial, leaving only what is strong enough to endure. Stephanie stood beside her, his tall, athletic frame casting a protective shadow. He looked down at her, at the serious, thoughtful curve of her mouth, the clear blue of her eyes that mirrored the deep water below. For the first time, he felt a profound sense of gratitude for being grounded. If he had flown to Baltimore or Enugu, he would have missed this precise moment. The smell of the pine trees, the warmth of the sun on ancient limestone, and the quiet clarity of her presence. I think my mother knew that, Stephanie replied, reaching out to take her hand, his dark fingers weaving naturally through hers. She kept me here so the wind could clear my head. I spent so much time trying to keep everyone across the world happy that I wasn't actually present anywhere. Irina turned her hand, squeezing his palm. And are you here now, Steph? Completely, he said, his voice dropping to a low, resonant register that carried the steady weight of a promise.
Staying here with you
Every
was the best thing
single
for us.
piece of me is right here.
Mom, Dad,
The vocabulary of
thank you
two
for
houses building,
Nigeria or Baltimore
an
would've been
intimate,
crazy.
enduring
I love Trieste
relationship,
so much more now.
meant navigating
Things
the
with Irina are
collision of their
serious.
respective family cultures. For Irina, romance was a private, deeply personal matter, nurtured over long walks through the San Vito district and quiet dinners in traditional Rossetti taverns. For Stephanie,
Chapter 1.
family was an expansive,
The limestone
loud,
walls.
and
Stephanie
community-driven
possessed a fluid
reality,
elegance,
where
identifying
individual
where I belong
relationships were
beneath
always
the
observed
shared
by a
experience of
chorus of
quiet friendship.
aunties, uncles, and cousins.
Here we are.
Oh, welcome! It is so wonderful to finally meet you. Come inside, come sit down. Make yourself comfortable.
Irina, I love you so much. You mean absolutely everything to me. I will always care for you. Comment
Like,
and subscribe to Total Entertainment Channel.
we love you.
Where individual relationships were always observed by a chorus of aunties, uncles, and cousins. The true test of their integration came during the late autumn, when Rose Mads Kent invited Irina to the family mansion for a formal Sunday lunch. Irina arrived carrying a small, perfectly wrapped tray of pasticceria from a historic cafe downtown, a traditional Italian gesture of respect. She was visibly nervous,
I have never
her
felt
fingers
this way about
smoothing
anyone
down the
before.
fabric of her tailored wool skirt
you so
as
much. I cannot
Stephanie
imagine my life
opened the
without
grand double doors of the villa. "Don't worry," Stephanie whispered, kissing her temple as he guided her inside. "My mother has been cooking since yesterday. That means she
Stephanie
already
has told
likes
us
you."
so much about
The
you.
dining room was alive
Thank
with
you. It's all
fragrance.
so delicious.
Rose had prepared a spectacular fusion meal, a traditional Italian risotto ai frutti di mare, followed by a rich, deeply aromatic Nigerian stew with plantains, modified slightly to accommodate a palate unaccustomed to intense equatorial spice. "Come in, my dear, come in," Rose cried, emerging from the kitchen with her arms wide. She was wrapped in a vibrant, patterned emerald wrapper, her presence commanding, yet
Oh,
warm.
welcome. It is so
She embraced
wonderful to
Irina
finally
tightly,
meet you.
bypassing
Come
the
inside,
formal
come sit
Italian
down.
cheek kisses entirely. "Stephanie has told us so much about you. Sit down, let us eat." Nelson Kent sat at the head of the table, offering Irina a reassuring, paternal smile. "Don't let Rose overwhelm you, Irina. If she starts asking about your 5-year plan, just tell her you're focusing on passing your final high school exams." The lunch lasted for 4 hours, a grand, rolling symphony of conversation that shifted effortlessly between Italian, English, and occasional bursts of local Triestino dialect. Irina navigated the terrain with a quiet, respectful intelligence that deeply impressed Stephanie's parents. She spoke passionately about her studies in classical literature.
This coffee tastes so much better with this beautiful view.
Everything is better when we are here together. Next stop, Rome!
Let's get on board.
My professors are pushing me to apply for a master's in Milan or London.
You should apply, Steph.
"So much about you. Sit down, let us eat." Nelson Kent sat at the head of the table, offering Irina a reassuring, paternal smile. "Don't let Rose overwhelm you, Irina. If she starts asking about your 5-year plan, just tell her you're focusing on passing your final high school exams." The lunch lasted for 4 hours, a grand, rolling symphony of conversation that shifted effortlessly between Italian, English, and occasional bursts of local Triestino dialect. Irina navigated the terrain with a quiet, respectful intelligence that deeply impressed Stephanie's parents. She spoke passionately about her studies in classical literature, her love for the sea, and her family's deep roots in the region. When the plates were cleared, Rose looked across the table at the 2 young people. She noticed the way Stephanie subtly adjusted Irina's chair, the way Irina smiled at his jokes with an easy, unforced devotion. Later, while Nelson and Stephanie were out on the terrace discussing university coursework, Rose called Irina into the kitchen to help carry the coffee service. "He is a good boy, Irina," Rose said softly, setting down the porcelain cups. Her voice was no longer that of the demanding matriarch, but of a mother handing over a precious inheritance. "But his heart is very large, and sometimes it gets heavy because he carries 3 worlds inside it.
Total
He
Entertainment
needs someone who can give him a singular destination. I see the way he looks at you. When he looks at you, he's not thinking about Nigeria or America. He is home." Irina felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Signora Kent. I love him for..."
The Bora wind is the city's architect. It leaves only what is strong.
I'm completely here now. Every single piece of me is right here.
My professors are pushing me to apply.
Sometimes it gets heavy because he carries 3 worlds inside it.
Total
He
Entertainment.
needs someone who can give him a singular destination. I see the way he looks at you. When he looks at you, he's not thinking about Nigeria or America. He is home. Irina felt a warmth spread through her chest. "Thank you, Signora Kent. I love him for exactly who he is, all 3 pieces of him. Call me Auntie Rose. The older woman smiled, patting her cheek. That is how we do it in my country. The slow season, as Stephanie turned 21 and entered his final year of international economics at the university, the relationship entered its deep winter phase. The slow season of study, routine, and quiet intimacy. Romance was no longer defined by grand summer adventures, but by the steady, unglamorous rhythms of partnership. They established a routine that became the scaffolding of their love. Every Tuesday and Thursday evening, they studied together in the historic Biblioteca Civica in the Piazza Hortis. The library was a quiet sanctuary of high stone arches and old books. The silence, broken only by the scratching of pens and the rustle of pages. Stephanie would watch Irina across the wooden table. She would concentrate so deeply that a small crease would form between her brows, her fingers twisting a strand of her hair. In those quiet hours, his love for her deepened from the passionate, reactive spark of late adolescence into something structural. He began to understand her character, her discipline, her resilience, her unwavering support for his ambitions. When the library closed at 8,
My professors are pushing me to apply for a master's in Milan or London.
You should apply, Steph. Distance only frightens people who don't know where they belong. You know where you belong now. We are building something that doesn't break just because someone boards a train.
Mom, Dad, thank you for grounding me. Nigeria or Baltimore would have been crazy. I love Trieste so much more now. And things with Irina are serious.
Mom, Dad, I really want to thank you. I'm so glad you grounded me from traveling. I love Trieste so much more now. And things are serious with Irina. Thank you for everything.
began to understand her character, her discipline, her resilience, her unwavering support for his ambitions. When the library closed at 8, they would walk through the chilly, wind-swept streets to the Canal Grande. The water would be dark, reflecting the street lamps and the magnificent neoclassical facade of the Church of Sant'Antonio Nuovo. They would seek shelter in one of the small, historic cafes, ordering hot chocolate so thick it had to be eaten with a spoon. My professors are pushing me to apply for a master's program in Milan or London, Stephanie said one evening, holding his warm mug between his palms. He looked at her, watching her reaction closely. Irina didn't flinch. She set her spoon down and looked at him with an expression of calm certainty. You should apply, Steph. You have an international mind. It would be a crime to keep you locked in one small city forever. But what about us? He asked, his voice vulnerable. I've spent so much time trying to escape distance. The thought of being away from you. It feels like stepping backward. Irina reached across the small marble table, her hand covering his. Distance only frightens people who don't know where they belong, Stephanie.
This coffee tastes
You know
so much
where
better
you
with
belong
this
now.
view.
Whether you are in
Everything is better
Milan,
when we are here
London,
together.
or across the ocean, you are anchored here, with me. We are building something that doesn't break just because someone boards a train. The maturity of her response struck him profoundly. He realized that while he had been worried about his mother's timeline, the expectation to marry 2 years after university, Irina was focused on the quality of the foundation. She wasn't rushing him toward an altar. She was ensuring that when they finally arrived there, they would stand on solid.
Irina, I love you so much. You mean absolutely everything to me. I will always care for you.
Questo posto è davvero incantevole.
Sapevo che ti sarebbe piaciuto moltissimo.
Ciao mamma, siamo qui! Oh mio Dio, non ci credo!
Che splendida notizia, venite dentro!
The test of the Atlantic. The true test came the following year. Stephanie graduated from the University of Trieste at the top of his class, a proud moment marked by a traditional laurel wreath placed upon his head, as his parents and Irina cheered from the front row of the lecture hall. Following his graduation, he was offered a prestigious 6-month internship with a global maritime logistics firm based in New York City, a vital stepping stone for his career in international trade. It was an opportunity he could not refuse, and one that his father, Captain Nelson, highly encouraged. For the first time since they had committed to each other, Stephanie faced a prolonged separation. The night before his departure, they walked down to the very edge of the Molo Audace, the long-stoned pier that stretches into the heart of the Trieste harbor. The winter wind was bitter, turning their breath into white mist, but they stood close, wrapped in their heavy wool coats. 6 months, Irina said, her voice small against the vast sound of the lapping sea. 6 months, Stephanie repeated, pulling her into his arms, burying his face in her scarf.
I promise.
But I will call you every single day. The time zones won't matter. I'll make New York time match Trieste time. Don't change your world for me, Steph, she whispered, looking up at him with tears glittering in her eyes. Just come back to me. The period in New York was a whirlwind of high-stress environments, towering skyscrapers, and the relentless, fast-paced energy of Manhattan. Stephanie lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, working long hours analyzing shipping routes and trade data. In America, the old temptations of his youth returned in subtle ways.
I still can't believe how beautiful it is here. Trieste always surprises me.
I know, Barcola is just magical.
It really is. Questo posto è assolutamente bellissimo, vero?
Yeah, it really is.
This really is the best espresso in Trieste. I'm just happy to be here with you.
Whirlwind of high-stress environments, towering skyscrapers, and the relentless, fast-paced energy of Manhattan. Stephanie lived in a small apartment in Brooklyn, working long hours analyzing shipping routes and trade data. In America, the old temptations of his youth returned in subtle ways. At corporate networking events and social gatherings with other young interns, his unique charm, striking international background, and easy confidence attracted immediate attention. There were invitations to dinners, parties, and casual dates from vibrant, successful young women who inhabited the high-energy world of Manhattan. But the vertigo that had plagued him at 18 was gone. Every evening, regardless of how exhausted he was or how late the corporate dinners ran, Stephanie would return to his apartment, log on to his computer, and wait for the notification that signaled Irina was awake
I am always
in Italy.
here with you.
They would talk for hours, sharing the details of their days, discussing their reading, and planning the architecture of their future home. He found himself telling his American colleagues about her with a pride that left no room for ambiguity. "My girlfriend in Trieste" became a common phrase in his vocabulary. He discovered that by fully committing his heart to one person, the vastness of the world ceased to be a source of distraction and became instead a stage where he could demonstrate his loyalty. The alignment of the stars. When Stephanie returned to Trieste the following spring, he was no longer a boy navigating a dilemma. He was a 22-year-old professional with a global career beginning to take shape, a steady income, and an unshakable sense of purpose.
6 months.
But I will call you every single day. come back for you.
I am always here with you.
18 was now reaching its natural conclusion. But it was no longer an external pressure from an African mother. It had become his own deepest desire. One evening in May, when the wild roses were blooming along the paths of the Miramar Castle, Stephanie organized a private dinner on the terrace of the Kent family mansion. His parents had intentionally left the house for the evening, giving them the complete solitude of the coastal night. The table was set with white linen, illuminated by the soft, warm glow of candles that resisted the gentle sea breeze. Stephanie had
this is
personally
absolutely
prepared the
incredible.
meal,
Absolutely
a
incredible.
delicate balance
I'm so
of
glad you liked
Italian
it.
technique and subtle West African spices that he had perfected over the years. After dinner, as they stood by the marble railing watching the moon trace a silver path across the Adriatic, Stephanie turned to Irina. He took a small velvet box from his pocket, his hands steady, his eyes locked onto hers with a clarity that had been forged over years of deliberate choice. Irina, when I was 18, I thought I had to choose between 3 different countries, 3 different cultures, and 3 different lives, he said, his voice rich with emotion. I thought my identity was a puzzle I
Questo
couldn't
posto è
solve.
assolutamente bellissimo,
But you
vero?
showed me that
Yeah,
home
it
isn't a
really
place
is.
on a map. Home is the person who makes you present in the world. You are my harbor, Irina. Will you marry me? Irina looked at the ring, a beautiful, classic diamond set in a band of white gold that caught the moonlight, and then up at the man who had crossed oceans only to find his truth standing right beside her. See, she whispered, her voice cracking the joy that had been years.
God bless your beautiful union.
Stephanie, this is absolutely incredible.
Absolutely incredible. I'm so glad you like it.
You are my harbor, Irina. Will you marry me? Irina looked at the ring, a beautiful, classic diamond set in a band of white gold that caught the moonlight, and then up at the man who had crossed oceans only to find his truth standing right beside her. See, she whispered, her voice cracking with a joy that had been years in the making. See, Stephanie, 1,000 times yes. The wedding, held the following year at the Cathedral of San Giusto, was a celebration that the city of Trieste would remember for a generation.
Agos, stiamo arrivando! We are finally here in Enugu.
It is so beautiful and warm.
I told you you'd love it.
I told you you'd love it.
Look, almost at the house now.
The gathering of rivers. The morning sun of Enugu did not rise so much as it dissolved into the air, turning the heavy mist of the early harmattan into a warm, amber haze that smelled faintly of wood smoke, roasted palm kernels, and the damp, iron-rich earth of southeastern Nigeria. 6 months had passed since the bells of the Cathedral of San Giusto had echoed across the Gulf of
Irina's
Trieste,
sensory journey begins.
sealing the union between
The modern
Stephanie
world
Kent
is left
and
behind.
Irina Diamandi.
Saturated
For half a
crimson
year,
odyssey
they
ahead.
had lived in the quiet,
Look at that,
domestic
Irina!
bliss of their seaside apartment
It is
along
so
the Costiera, adapting
where my
to
father
the
was
gentle
born.
rhythms of marriage. But Stephanie knew their vows were only the frame of the house. The foundation had to be anchored in the soil of his ancestors. To truly systemize Irina into the grand, sprawling tapestry of the Kent and Okiki lineages, they had to cross oceans. Irina stepped out onto the wide, concrete veranda of the family's urban residence in the Independence layout, holding a steaming mug of lemongrass tea. She wore a simple, light linen dress, but around her waist, She had carefully knotted a vibrant indigo and ochre aqua ocha wrapper, a gift from Stephanie's mother, Rose. The air feels alive here, Steph, Irina whispered, leaning against his shoulder as he joined her. In Trieste, the sea wind is crisp and predictable. Here, it feels like the earth is breathing right next to you. Stephanie wrapped a broad, dark arm around her waist, pulling her close. That's the heartbeat of the continent, amore mio. It takes a few days to get used to the rhythm, but once it gets inside you, you never stop hearing it. Their 6-week stay in Nigeria was designed as a cultural immersion. Rose Mads Kent had flown in 2 weeks prior to ensure the compound was prepared, driven by the fierce maternal determination of an Igbo woman welcoming her first daughter-in-law. This trip was not a vacation. It was an initial.
Welcome to Enugu. Enjoy your ride. We are finally here!
It is so beautiful. Irina's sensory journey begins. The modern world is left behind. Saturated crimson odyssey ahead.
Look at that, Irina!
It is so beautiful.
This is where my father was born.
Was prepared, driven by the fierce maternal determination of an Igbo woman welcoming her first daughter-in-law. This trip was not a vacation. It was an initiation. The heavy iron gates of the compound rumbled open, and Uncle Chidi's large SUV pulled into the driveway, its tires coated in the fine red dust of the old coal city. From the back seat emerged Mama Neka, Stephanie's maternal grandmother, her fragile frame wrapped in layers of ceremonial cloth, her eyes as sharp and discerning as the morning sun. "They are here." Rose's voice echoed from the kitchen, rich and melodic, as she hurried out to the veranda. "Stephanie, Irina, come down. The elders have arrived from the village." Irina took a deep breath, her fingers tightening around Stephanie's hand. She was a daughter of the Adriatic, raised in the structured, quiet elegance of northern Italy. But as she looked at the gathering of uncles, aunts, and elders filling the courtyard, she felt a profound sense of reverence. This was the source of the man she loved. To love him fully meant to honor the roots that fed him. The crimson thread. The journey to the ancestral village near Algu was a sensory odyssey that Irina would later record meticulously in her leather-bound journal. The smooth paved avenues of Enugu gradually gave way to undulating red dirt tracks that snaked through dense canopies of oil palms, giant iroko trees, and sprawling cassava farms. The earth was a vibrant, saturated crimson, a stark contrast to the pale limestone cliffs of the Triestino Carso. When the vehicle finally stopped in the center of the family compound, the air was suddenly filled with the rhythmic, high-pitched resonance of the ojin, the traditional iron gong, accompanied by the joyful, syncopated clapping of the village women. "No! No! Our white chalk has arrived!" the women sang.
Irina, look! This is the exact village where my mother grew up. It feels so incredible to finally be here.
Onye nyere m ịgbalụ bịa n'udo. Yes, just like that. Follow the rhythm.
The traditional iron gong, accompanied by the joyful, syncopated clapping of the village women. "No! No! Our white chalk has arrived!" the women sang in Igbo, referencing the traditional symbol of purity, peace, and welcome. Irina stepped out of the vehicle, and for a moment, the sheer volume of sound and color threatened to overwhelm her. But Mama Neka stepped forward, her wrinkled hands holding a small clay bowl, filled with fresh alligator pepper and garden eggs. She dipped her fingers into a vessel of water and gently touched Irina's forehead, then her palms. Onyenurem, Mama Neka said, looking at Stephanie before turning her gaze completely to Irina. You have brought us a daughter from across the salt water. Let her feet be blessed upon this soil. Stephanie translated the words into a soft, rapid Italian whisper into Irina's ear. Irina smiled, her eyes glistening with emotion, and she did something that instantly won the hearts of the gathered elders. She knelt down completely, bowing her head in a gesture of absolute respect, just as Stephanie had taught her during their quiet evenings in Trieste. A collective roar of approval erupted from the compound. Auntie Chinwe rushed forward, hoisting Irina back to her feet and wrapping a heavy, hand-woven ceremonial sash across her shoulder. She knows our ways. Chinwe laughed, her voice booming across the yard. Nelson, your son has married a proper, well-behaved girl. She doesn't stand stiff like a tourist. The days that followed were a beautiful, exhausting masterclass in cultural synthesis. Irina did not sit apart as an observer. She immersed herself in the daily domestic choreography of the compound. She sat on a low wooden stool in the open-air kitchen alongside Rose and the village aunts.
There is so much I never knew about my heritage.
It is truly incredible to learn all this.
Guarda Irina, siamo finalmente a Baltimora.
It is so wonderful to meet you. Welcome home. We have been waiting for this day.
It is so good to be here. My grandfather actually came here when he first arrived.
Wow, it feels exactly like a little piece of Trieste.
Part as an observer, she immersed herself in the daily domestic choreography of the compound. She sat on a low wooden stool in the open-air kitchen alongside Rose and the village aunts, learning the precise rhythmic art of pounding yams in a massive wooden mortar. Her muscles ached from the effort, and her fair skin was dusted with cassava flour. But every time she successfully mimicked the circular motion of the heavy pestle, the women cheered. Irina's initiation metrics, task learned and the cultural significance won. Yam pounding, cultural significance, stamina, and domestic unity 2. Ofe onugbu, selection, cultural significance, discernment and patience. 3. Igbo, greeting, tones, cultural significance, respecting the ancestral hierarchy and heritage. In the evenings, under a canopy of stars that shone with an untamed, brilliant clarity impossible to find in Europe, the family tree was formally unrolled. Sitting by a crackling fire of palm fronds, Papa Oke, the family historian, spoke for hours. He traced the lineage back 7 generations, recounting the names of farmers, warriors, and matriarchs who had walked these same red paths. Irina listened intently, her notebook open on her lap, drawing lines and connecting names. She was not just learning a history. She was mapping the genetic and spiritual landscape that had produced her husband. Your name is here now, Irina, Papa Oke said, pointing his carved wooden staff toward the red earth. You are the branch that reaches back to the Mediterranean. When your children are born, they will know that their blood belongs to this soil just as much as it belongs to the sea. That night, as they lay under the mosquito netting in the cool, block-walled bedroom of the village house, Irina rested her head on Steph.
Wow, this place is incredible!
Baltimore nightlife is the best.
I never want to leave.
This is exactly what I needed.
Me too. Trieste is nice, but this is special.
Guarda Irina, siamo finalmente a Baltimora.
It is so wonderful to meet you. Welcome home. We have been waiting for this day.
It is so good to be here.
Is here now, Irina, Papa Oke said, pointing his carved wooden staff toward the red earth. You are the branch that reaches back to the Mediterranean. When your children are born, they will know that their blood belongs to this soil just as much as it belongs to the sea. That night, As they lay under the mosquito netting in the cool, block-walled bedroom of the village house, Irina rested her head on Stephanie's chest. "I used to think your identity was a complication, Steph," she murmured softly. "But now, I see it's an inheritance. I'm so proud to have my name written next to yours in their memory." The wide Atlantic horizon. If Nigeria was the emotional deep root of their journey, the United States of America was the expansive, high-energy stage where their marriage was to be tested and solidified over a full, transformative year. In late September, as the rainy season began to recede from West Africa, Stephanie and Irina boarded a transatlantic flight bound for John F. Kennedy International Airport in New York, before taking the regional train down to Baltimore, Maryland. This was the homeland of Captain Nelson Kent, a world of massive scale, wide highways, suburban brick houses, and a fast-paced, individualistic drive that was entirely distinct from both the ancient traditions of Enugu and the quiet reserve of Trieste. Nelson had arranged for the young couple to stay in a beautiful, detached colonial house in the historic Mount Washington neighborhood of Baltimore, not far from Uncle Marcus's residence. Stephanie had secured a remote analytical position with his global logistics firm, while Irina enrolled in a year-long postgraduate seminar in comparative cultural studies at Johns Hopkins University. "Welcome to America, kids," Uncle Marcus shouted as he greeted them at the station, his massive arms wrapping around both of them simultaneously. He smelled of Old Bay seasoning and autumn wind. "A whole year. We're going to show this Italian girl what a real
Irina, look at these skyscrapers!
Wow, this highway is huge. Wow, this place is absolutely beautiful, Stephanie.
Yeah, it's a huge piece of history. I can't believe we are finally here at Johns Hopkins.
It is even more beautiful than I imagined.
There is so much I never knew about my heritage.
It is truly incredible to learn all this.
his massive arms wrapping around both of them simultaneously. He smelled of Old Bay seasoning and autumn wind. A whole year. We're going to show this Italian girl what a real Maryland crab feast looks like. The transition to American life required a different kind of cultural navigation. For Irina, the sheer scale of everything, the 12-lane highways, the massive supermarkets, the towering portions of food, was a shock to the system. But Stephanie was a masterful guide. He used his secondary country's familiarity to create a sense of adventure. Their dates in America became an exploration of his father's heritage. On crisp October weekends, they would drive down to the inner harbor, walking along the brick promenades where historic ships were docked. Stephanie would point out the types of cargo vessels his father had commanded, explaining the complex maritime history that linked the ports of the American East Coast to the Mediterranean.
Nightlife is the best.
They spent hours exploring the Smithsonian Museums in Washington, D.C., standing together before the exhibits at the National Museum of African American History and Culture. Irina stood silently for a long time before the displays detailing the Great Migration, the movement of millions of African Americans from the rural South to the industrial North. She began to understand the specific, resilient cultural identity of her father-in-law,
Wow,
Nelson
this highway
Kent.
is huge.
It was a history of survival, innovation, and distinct musical and artistic expression. My dad's family survived by creating their own anchors when the world tried to cut them loose, Stephanie explained as they walked through the autumn leaves of the National Mall. That's why he was so comfortable settling in Trieste. He didn't need a country to tell him who he was. He carried his home inside his character. Irina looked at him, her eyes filled with a deep, romantic appreciation. You have that same strength, Steph. I see it when you walk through these massive cities. You don't look lost.
Here we are, Irina, my grandparents' home.
Oh, look at you. Come here and give me a
It is
hug.
so wonderful to finally meet you.
You have your father's eyes, Stephanie. 7 generations of farmers, warriors, and matriarchs. 7 generations of farmers, warriors, and matriarchs. This is the bloodline that made him. This scroll traces our lineage back 7 generations to the farmers and warriors who walked these 7 generations walked these red paths. He traced the lineage back 7 generations.
The systemization of love. As the months passed in Baltimore, the process of systemizing Irina into the family tree took on a practical, legal, and social reality. It was one thing to be welcomed in a village ceremony in Nigeria. It was another to navigate the complex web of an extended American family network over 4 full seasons. During the American holidays, Thanksgiving, Christmas, and the 4th of July, the Mount Washington house became the epicenter of the Kent family diaspora. Cousins from Atlanta, aunts from Philadelphia, and uncles from Chicago descended upon Baltimore. Irina, who had initially been intimidated by the booming voices and rapid-fire American slang, found her own unique place within the family dynamic. She introduced them to the culinary traditions of Friuli, preparing massive platters of frico, crisp cheese and potato pies, and gnocchi di Sucine side by side with Uncle Marcus's smoked ribs and sweet potato casseroles. "She's a keeper, Steph," his cousin Chloe whispered one evening during a crowded Christmas party, watching Irina sit on the floor with the younger nieces, teaching them how to count in Italian while helping them build a Lego castle. "She doesn't try too hard, but she's just there for everyone. She feels like she's always been part of the crew." The true romance of their American year lay in its domestic stability. Away from the watchful eyes of both sets of parents in Trieste and Enugu, Stephanie and Irina were building their own unique marital culture. They established a Friday night tradition. They would order authentic New York-style pizza, put on a playlist of classic Nigerian...
Welcome home, Stephanie!
And welcome to the family, Irina.
Uncle Marcus,
She couldn't wait to try your famous ribs.
this is the best thing I have ever tasted.
You did it, Irina.
So proud of you.
Here we are, Irina, my grandparents' home.
Oh, look at you. Come here and give me a
It
hug.
is so wonderful to finally meet you.
You have your father's eyes, Stephanie.
It's so incredible having her here. I love it here. It's beautiful. You are family now, Irina.
You are family now, Irina.
To family, always.
Tradition. They would order authentic New York-style pizza, put on a playlist of classic Nigerian highlife music or American jazz, and sit on the floor of their living room, reviewing Irina's university research or Stephanie's logistics charts. They were no longer two young people trying to prove their love across a distance. The distance had been conquered. By traveling together to the core locations of his identity, they had neutralized the threat of his complex geography.
This is the exact village where my
Nigeria
mother grew
was
up.
no longer a competing
It's so incredible
obligation.
to finally be here.
It was a shared memory of red earth and village laughter. America was no longer a distracting playground of his youth. It was a place where they had shared a quiet, successful winter of work and study. The returns and the ring. By the summer of 2027, the year-long American residence was drawing to a close. Irina had successfully completed her Johns Hopkins seminar, her final thesis
I can't
focusing
believe we are
precisely
finally
on the
here at
cultural
Johns Hopkins.
synthesis of
It
the
is even
African
more beautiful than I
diaspora in
imagined.
Southern Europe, a work inspired by her own husband's life. Stephanie had received a promotion within his firm, allowing him to transition to a permanent regional management role, based out of the Venice and Trieste port offices. On their final evening in America, before boarding the flight back to Italy, Stephanie took Arena to
look
a
at these
quiet,
skyscrapers.
elevated park overlooking the Chesapeake Bay.
Wow, this highway
The
is
sun
huge.
was setting, casting a long amber glow over the water, reminiscent of both the evening light over Enugu's hills and the sunset over the Adriatic. He reached into his pocket and produced a small, beautifully polished wooden box. Inside was not a new ring, but their original wedding bands, which he had seen.
Man, welcome home, Stephanie! Everyone, this is my wife, Arina.
It is so nice to meet you all.
There it is, Arina. That's my old elementary school.
Stephanie, look at how much you have grown, boy.
It looks exactly like it did when I was in elementary school.
I can't believe we are finally here in Baltimore. Wow, this place is incredible!
Baltimore nightlife is the best.
I never want to leave.
Evening light over Enugu's hills and the sunset over the Adriatic. He reached into his pocket and produced a small, beautifully polished wooden box. Inside was not a new ring, but their original wedding bands, which he had secretly taken to a traditional craftsman in Baltimore's Arts District. Arina looked closer and gasped gently. Inside the gold band of her ring, the craftsman had meticulously engraved 3 distinct patterns: a small stylized wave representing the Adriatic, a geometric line mimicking the uli art of her Nigerian grandmother, and a tiny, sharp star representing the American sky. "Our map," Stephanie said softly, sliding the ring back onto her finger. "You spent this past year and a half walking through my past, Arina. You let the red dust stain your clothes, and you let the American winter test your patience. You didn't just join my family, you helped me organize my own soul." Arina looked up at him, her face illuminated by the soft coastal twilight, her heart entirely at peace. "I didn't just join a family, Steph. I found my geography. Wherever we go now, whether we are walking through the Piazza Unità, the markets of Enugu, or the streets of Baltimore, we are the tree. The roots are deep, the branches are wide, and the fruit is ours." They stood together at the edge of the bay, watching the tide roll out toward the Atlantic. They were returning to Trieste the next day, back to the Whitestone mansion along the Costiera, back to their daily lives by the sea, but they were returning transformed. The initiation was complete. Arina Diamandi Kent was no longer a visitor to Stephanie's worlds. She was their ultimate destination.